You can judge me. Go ahead. I get it. What I did. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. And believe me, I've judged myself enough for both of us. But before you roll your eyes or click away, just listen. Because behind every mistake is a reason. Behind every wrecked marriage, every lie, there's a story. And mine? Mine started on a Tuesday afternoon, when a stranger named Noah knocked on my front door and flipped everything I thought I knew, inside out. I was married. I had kids. A house with beige walls and white picket fences. The kind of life people envy on Instagram, you know? But behind those photos, there was silence. Long, cold, lonely silence. Michael, my husband, he wasn't cruel. He wasn't mean. He just stopped seeing me. I was the woman who packed the lunches, folded the laundry, showed up to every parent-teacher conference. But I wasn't me anymore. I was a ghost wearing the skin of a wife. And then, Noah, he came to fix a leak under my kitchen sink. Tool belt slung around his hips. Hands rough from labor. Eyes soft. Curious. God, I remember thinking he smelled like cedarwood and fresh rain. It's funny how something so small can become the beginning of something massive. A broken pipe. That's all it was. A tiny drip echoing in my sink like a ticking clock. And then he walked in. And everything, shifted. He asked if I needed help with anything else. I said no. But he stayed. We talked. About books. About music. About how hard it is to feel alive when life becomes one big routine. And somewhere between the sound of his laugh and the way he looked at me, really looked at me, I started to remember who I was. Not the mother. Not the wife. Me. I know how this sounds. Like I'm blaming my loneliness for what came next. But the truth is, I didn't plan any of it. It started with a tool belt. A simple fix. An unspoken tension I didn't want to acknowledge. But I'll never forget the first time. He put his tool in my sink, and something inside me started to crack. And what poured out wasn't just desire. It was everything I'd been holding back for years. So no, I won't pretend the story has a happy ending. But it has a real one. And if you've ever found yourself craving something more, something real, then maybe, just maybe, you'll understand why I did what I did. And why I'd do it again, even if it broke me. I'm Isabelle, 38, 14 years married. 2 kids, Ella and Drew. On paper, I have the life people write greeting cards about. Michael, my husband, is a good man. Solid, reliable, composed. He does the dishes. He shows up for work on time. He says, "I love you," before hanging up the phone. But somewhere along the way, I stopped hearing it. We weren't fighting. There weren't raised voices or broken plates. But the silence between us started to feel heavier than anything we ever said. He'd come home, loosen his tie, ask about the kids, scroll through his phone during dinner. And I'd smile. I'd serve the casserole. I'd nod along to stories about his boss's new car, even though I stopped caring about those people years ago. And every night, we'd sleep in the same bed, separated by a distance we never talked about. I used to think routine meant safety. Now, it just meant I was fading. Then the sink broke. It was such a small thing. A leak, dripping every few seconds like some slow, lazy metronome. But it was loud. In the quiet of our house, it was so loud. Michael said he'd call someone. He didn't. So I did. Noah came 2 days later. A neighbor had recommended him. Said he was fast, polite, did good work. I opened the door and there he was. Mid-20s. Maybe 26. Sun-kissed skin, a tool belt slung low on his hips, t-shirt worn thin around the shoulders. Strong hands. Wide palms. Fingers nicked with little reminders that he worked with them. He smiled, and I remember thinking, it wasn't just polite. It was warm. Easy. I led him to the kitchen and pointed under the sink. He crouched down, flashlight in hand, tools clinking softly as he got to work. And for a while it was quiet, except for the rhythmic tapping of metal, the occasional hum from him as he tightened things. I stood by the counter, unsure of what to do with myself. It felt silly, hovering in my own kitchen. But then he said something that caught me off guard. "You don't smile much." I looked up. "Excuse me?" He glanced at me from under the sink, his eyes playful, not mocking. "It's just, you've got a nice face. I bet it's even better with a real smile." I should have said something snappy. "Shut it down." But instead, I just stood there, frozen. Because those 4 words? They echoed in my chest like a song I'd forgotten I loved. "You don't smile much." He wasn't wrong. I hadn't smiled, really smiled, in a long time. When he stood, wiping his hands on a rag, his eyes scanned the kitchen. "Is that Steinbeck?" he asked, nodding at a dog-eared copy of East of Eden on the counter. I blinked. "Yeah, you read?" He chuckled, and I swear the sound bounced off those cold kitchen tiles and wrapped around me. "I do. Mostly fiction. Stuff that hurts a little when it's honest." I laughed, short, surprised. "That's exactly why I read too." And just like that, the space between us changed. He wasn't just the handyman anymore. He was someone. Someone who saw things. Who felt things. We talked while he worked. About books. Music. How hard it is to find quiet moments that actually feel good quiet, not lonely. At one point, he reached for a tool and his fingers brushed mine. Just a touch, barely a second. But it jolted me. Because my body noticed. And more than that, my heart did too. He didn't flirt, not exactly. But his presence lingered. Like the scent of cedar and warm skin that clung to the air long after he'd gone. When he packed up to leave, he paused at the door. "You've got good taste in stories," he said. And I smiled, actually smiled. "Thanks for fixing the sink," I told him. He looked at me for a moment. Just looked. And said, softly, "You're welcome. Anytime." The door shut behind him. And I stood there. Alone. In my silent kitchen. With a sink that no longer dripped. And a pulse that wouldn't slow down. I didn't know it then, how far it would go. How deep I'd sink into something that started so simple. But I felt it. That shift. That crack in the ice. The moment when just a man fixing my sink became something else entirely. Something dangerous. Something inevitable. And God help me. Something I wanted. He came back. First it was the hallway light that kept flickering. Then the loose hinge on the pantry door. After that, the cracked tile near the back entrance that had been that way for years. None of it was urgent. None of it even bothered me before. But suddenly, every little imperfection in my home felt like an excuse to see him again. And he always came. Noah. He never seemed rushed. He'd greet me with that easy smile and ask how my day was going. He'd crouch down to work, and I'd find myself standing nearby, pretending to check my phone. Just so I could hear his voice. And we talked. God, we talked. Not just about sinks or screws or which drill bit worked best. We talked about music. He loved old blues, the kind of stuff that sounds like heartbreak wrapped in honey. We talked about books. He was reading The Bell Jar, and I remember being surprised, touched, that a man like him, with broad shoulders and calloused hands, could love words that fragile. He told me he was raised by his grandmother. Said she taught him how to fix things, but also how to pay attention. She used to say, "You listen with more than your ears," he told me once, while tightening a doorknob. And he did. He noticed everything. My chipped nail polish, the red flaking off like peeling wallpaper. The way I rubbed my temple when the kids had pushed me to my edge. Even the fatigue behind my smile, the kind of tired that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from being unseen for too long. One afternoon, I caught him adjusting a door that didn't need fixing. "Didn't that work fine?" I asked, eyebrow raised. He shrugged. "I like making things smoother." And I knew. It wasn't about the door. It was about staying. Each visit lasted longer than the last. He never rushed to leave, and I never rushed to stop him. Sometimes our fingers touched when he passed me a wrench. Sometimes our laughter lingered just a second too long. There was one moment, brief, but seared into my mind, when I bent to pick something up, and as I stood, we brushed against each other. My shoulder against his chest. His breath warm against my cheek. Neither of us moved right away. Just a second. But it held more tension than any argument I'd had in my marriage. I found myself dressing with more care on the days he was coming over, swapping out my stained house tea for something softer, prettier, reapplying lip balm before answering the door. And every time the doorbell rang, my stomach did this stupid flutter, like I was 15 again, hoping my crush would notice me in homeroom. It was ridiculous. It was dangerous. And I wanted it. One late afternoon, it started raining, suddenly, fiercely. He'd just finished tightening the hinges on the basement door when the sky cracked open. "Looks like I'm stuck for a while," he said, peering out the kitchen window. My heart beat louder than the rain on the roof. "Tea?" I offered, trying to sound casual. He nodded. "I'd like that." I made us both mugs and we sat at the little table near the window. The kids weren't home yet. Michael was still at work. It was just us. And the storm. We didn't talk much that day. The silence was soft, not awkward, but close. Like a blanket stretched between us. I remember the way he looked at me, eyes steady, thoughtful. Not hungry. Not rushed. Just seeing me. Like he was reading the sentences in my silence. I wrapped both hands around my mug, feeling the heat bleed into my skin. I should have asked about his weekend. Or his next job. But instead, I said, "Do you ever feel like you're living a life that doesn't quite fit you?" He didn't even hesitate. All the time. He didn't press. Didn't ask me to explain. He just let the words hang there between us, suspended in the warm scent of tea and rain. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. I wanted him to stay stuck. I wanted the rain to keep falling forever. Because the thought of him leaving, of the door shutting and the silence returning, felt unbearable. That night, after he finally left, I stood by the window long after the rain had stopped. His footprints still dark in the driveway. My heart still heavy in my chest. I told myself it was nothing. Just loneliness. Just flattery. Just a man being kind. But deep down, beneath all the reasons and rationalizations, I knew the truth. I wasn't just hoping something would break in the house again. I was hoping something would break in me. Because every time he looked at me like that, like I mattered, like I was real, I felt a little less invisible. And a little more willing to risk everything for the chance to feel alive again. That day, the sky didn't just open up, it cracked. Thunder rolled in like a warning. The wind howled through the trees, and rain battered the windows so hard it felt like the house itself was shivering. Noah had just finished checking the water heater downstairs. Something minor. I don't even remember what excuse I gave him to come over that time. But I remember the storm. And I remember how everything changed. The power flickered once, then again. And then it went out. The whole house sighed into darkness. I fumbled for candles in the kitchen drawer, laughing nervously, my voice echoing too loudly in the silence. He stood by the doorway, hands in his pockets, eyes steady on me like he was memorizing the moment. I lit 2 candles, one on the table, one on the counter. Soft golden light painted the walls, flickering like breath. We sat across from each other. The world outside was chaos, crashing thunder, slashing rain, but inside, it was still. Too still. I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, feeling the chill sneak through the window panes. Noah shrugged off his jacket and draped it over the back of the chair. His shirt clung slightly to his chest from the humidity, wet at the collar, his hair damp, curling a little at the ends. He looked real. Like a man. Not a fantasy. Not a mistake waiting to happen. Just a man who saw me when no one else did. He reached for his tea, cold now, and set it back down without drinking. And then he looked at me. Not like before. This was different. Slower. Heavier. "You deserve to feel wanted," he said. His voice was low, Like he wasn't sure if the words were safe to say out loud. Like he was afraid of what they might break. I couldn't speak. My throat tightened. The rain kept coming down. In the distance, thunder growled. He stood, like he was about to leave. Like he knew the line had been crossed and there was no going back. Like he didn't want to make this harder than it already was. And I should have let him go. I should have stayed quiet. But I didn't. I reached out and touched his hand. Just his hand. His fingers were warm. Rough in the way that told you he worked with them. He didn't move. Neither did I. Time stretched in that tiny space between us, between the flickering candle and the storm outside. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't sex. But it was worse somehow. Because in that moment, we said everything without speaking. We knew. I wasn't just lonely. He wasn't just kind. Something was happening. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my ears. My skin felt too tight, too alive. He looked down at our hands, then up at me. You don't have to pretend anymore, he said. And it was like those words cracked something wide open inside me. I didn't cry. I didn't run. I just breathed, really breathed, for the first time in what felt like years. Because pretending had become second nature. Pretending to be fulfilled. Pretending to be fine. Pretending that being needed was the same as being wanted. But he saw me, and I was terrified of what it meant, of what it might become. But more than that, I was awake. For the first time in a long, long time. He didn't kiss me. He didn't pull me in. He just stayed there. Quiet. Solid. Until I let go of his hand. I should go, he whispered, almost apologetic. I nodded. But part of me screamed, don't. He took his jacket, stepped into the doorway. The storm had softened to a steady drizzle now. He paused once, looked back at me, like he was imprinting the shape of me in candlelight. Then he left. And the door clicked shut behind him. I sat there for a long time, staring at our empty mugs and the shadows dancing on the wall. My hand still tingled where I had touched him. Nothing had happened. But everything had changed. And I knew the next time wouldn't end with silence and distance. The dam had cracked. And when it finally broke, there would be no going back. It didn't happen all at once. There was no dramatic music. No fireworks. Just a quiet ache I couldn't ignore anymore. A week after that night of the storm, I texted him. Can you help me reorganize the garage? Nothing urgent, just whenever you have time. It was a lie. The shelves were fine. The garage didn't need anything. But I did. He replied within a few minutes. Sure, tomorrow afternoon. I remember staring at the screen for a long time, rereading it like it meant something more. Like the 3 words could answer a question I didn't even know how to ask. Sure, tomorrow afternoon. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed beside Michael, the ceiling fan humming above us, its rhythmic clicking like a metronome marking every second I spent wondering what I was becoming. Michael's back was turned. His breathing steady. Predictable. And my heart beat like a warning. The next day, I made sure the kids were at their friends' houses. I cleaned the living room, even though no one would see it. I changed clothes twice. Settled on jeans and a black fitted top. Simple. Not too much. But enough. When Noah arrived, he didn't bring tools. Just himself. And that look, that quiet, unreadable expression that sat somewhere between restraint and something much more dangerous. We went into the garage. The air was heavy. Hot. Dust clung to the sunlight streaming in through the high window. I pointed to a box in the corner, said something about it being too heavy. He lifted it like it weighed nothing. His arms tensed. His shirt rose just slightly at the hem. And I swear I wasn't staring. I wasn't. But he saw it anyway. He set the box down, turned to me and said, "Are we still pretending?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat tightened. My eyes burned. He stepped closer. "I think about you," he said. "All the time. I try not to. But I do." I could have stopped it. Right then. I could have laughed it off, made a joke, turned away. Instead, I reached up, barely, and touched his chest. Just one hand. Over his heartbeat. And then, like the world had been holding its breath for weeks, it exhaled. We didn't rush. We didn't tear at each other like in the movies. It was slow. Intentional. Like every movement mattered. Like we were learning each other. He kissed me in the quiet way a person kisses when they know there's no going back. When they know this isn't just lust, it's surrender. Clothes came off in the heat of that dusty garage. My back against cool concrete. His hands steady and shaking all at once. It wasn't perfect. It was raw, clumsy, tender, honest. We didn't speak for a long time afterward. We just lay there, half-dressed, limbs tangled, the sound of the ceiling fan echoing in the stillness. And when he finally whispered, "Are you okay?" I didn't know how to answer. Because I wasn't. I wasn't okay. But I felt something. For the first time in what felt like years, I felt. That was the beginning of what we told ourselves would be just this once. A mistake we could lock away and forget. But we both knew better. It became a pattern. A ritual. Secret rendezvous. The back of his truck at night, parked far out on the old country road where no one drove after dark. Motel rooms with curtains drawn tight, where we barely spoke and couldn't keep our hands off each other. My house when no one was home. Every creak of the floorboard felt like it might be the sound of my life collapsing. We used fake names when checking into places. We never took pictures. We never texted anything too obvious. And every message was deleted the second it was read. My phone was always on silent. Always face down. Every notification made my stomach twist. At home, I became quieter. More distracted. Michael started asking if I was okay. I said I was just tired. I told myself I was still a good mother. Still a wife. I made dinner. I helped with homework. I smiled at the PTA meetings. But inside, I was two people. And only one of them felt alive. Noah would send me voice notes sometimes, late at night. Just his voice, soft, low, like a secret being whispered into the dark. "I wish I could hold you right now," he'd say. Or, "I miss the way you breathe when you're asleep." And I would listen to them again and again, curled up in the bathroom with the door locked, the fan running to muffle the sound. But it wasn't just the pleasure. It was the guilt. The guilt that came like a shadow after every encounter. Like a tidal wave right after a moment of peace. Every time we were together, it felt right. Like the world clicked into place, even if just for an hour. And every time we weren't, the guilt clawed at me. Not at the corners of my sanity. I'd stare at Michael while he read in bed and wonder what kind of monster I was becoming. I'd fold my children's laundry and imagine what they'd think of me if they knew. I told myself I was still in control. That this was temporary. That I could stop anytime. But I didn't. Because when Noah touched me, I didn't feel like someone's wife. Or someone's mother. Or someone who blended into the background of her own life. I felt wanted. Not needed. Not tolerated. Wanted. And being wanted was a kind of oxygen I didn't know I'd been suffocating without. But being alive was costing me everything. Michael started to notice. It began with the small things. My silence at dinner. The way I flinched when he reached for my hand. How often I forgot to switch the laundry or left a burner on low too long. One night, he paused in the hallway and looked at me in that quiet way he does when he's too tired to argue but too unsettled to stay quiet. He said, "Is something wrong?" I shook my head. No. Just tired. But my voice cracked. Just enough. Just enough for him to know I was lying. Noah was changing too. In the beginning, he had been patient. Careful. But now, he was hungry for more. Not just time with me, but all of me. "Let's go away," he said once. "Just you and me. A weekend. No hiding. No guilt. Just us." I laughed. Nervously. We'd never make it back, I told him. We'd disappear. He didn't smile. Another night, when we were tangled in the back seat of his truck, parked behind a shuttered hardware store. He pulled me close and whispered, "Leave him." I froze. He held my face in his hands like I was made of glass, like if he squeezed too hard I'd shatter. "We both know this isn't just an affair," he said. And maybe it wasn't. Maybe I had fallen too deep, too fast. But I couldn't say yes, because I wasn't brave enough to torch the life I had built, no matter how brittle it had become. At home, Michael's eyes followed me more. He asked about my schedule, things he used to forget. He hugged me longer, like he was trying to remember what it felt like to have me near. And I hated myself for the way I recoiled inside. For the way I faked sleep at night so I wouldn't have to feel his breath on my neck. The lies started to stack, one on top of the other. They started small. I'm going to the store, book club ran late, I have a migraine. But the web tangled quickly. My best friend, Rachel, noticed first. We were at brunch, sipping coffee, and she just looked at me. "You're different," she said. I forced a smile. "Just tired." She narrowed her eyes. "No, you're elsewhere. Your mind's somewhere it shouldn't be." I laughed it off, changed the subject, but my stomach churned the entire drive home. And then, the first real close call. A Thursday afternoon. Michael had taken the kids to soccer. He was supposed to be gone for hours. Noah came over. We didn't make it past the living room. My shirt was halfway off when we heard the garage door open. Panic surged. I shoved Noah toward the back patio, practically threw him into the bushes behind the deck. Michael walked in minutes later, holding a forgotten lunchbox. I was breathless, flushed. My hair a mess. I was just cleaning, I stammered, holding a throw blanket in my arms like it explained something. He stared at me. And I saw it. That flicker. That unspoken suspicion. He didn't say anything. Just left again. But I knew the crack had widened. Later that night, I found my phone in a different spot on the counter. I hadn't moved it. The screen was warm, like it had been recently unlocked. I changed my passcode, turned off all message previews. But the dread didn't fade. Noah started to pull away in other ways. He'd cancel last minute. Seemed distracted when we were together. Like my hesitation had infected him with doubt too. One night, I asked him what he was thinking. He didn't answer for a long time. Then he said, "I love you. But I don't want to be your secret forever." I stared at him in the dim light of the motel room, the sheets tangled around my knees. I wanted to say, "I'll leave him." I wanted to believe that love alone was enough to justify the wreckage. But instead I said, "I'm trying. Trying." What a useless word. The pressure kept building. Rachel brought up therapy. Michael started checking in more than usual, texting during the day, offering to drive me places. I felt like a prisoner in my own home, not because they were watching me, but because the version of me they thought they knew was starting to crack. And I couldn't remember who I had been before Noah. Every kiss with him felt riskier. Every meeting was edged with fear. I stopped sleeping. I lost weight. I snapped at my children for things that never used to bother me. The affair had seeped into every crevice of my life. I was unraveling, coming apart thread by thread. And yet, I couldn't stop. It's strange, isn't it? How you can love two people in completely different ways. One feels like comfort, the other like oxygen. But you can't breathe both at once without choking. I knew something had to give. I just didn't know how soon. Everything would come crashing down. It happened on a Tuesday. Of all days. Not a Friday night or a slow, sleepy Sunday. A Tuesday. The kind of day that blends in with the rest. I was careless. I didn't double-check the doors. I didn't delete the message fast enough. I didn't even notice the faint scent of Noah's cologne, still clinging to the hallway like a ghost that refused to leave. Michael came home early. He wasn't supposed to. The kids had a ride home from school. He'd said he had a late meeting. But as I came out of the shower, towel wrapped tight, I heard the creak of the garage door. Too soon. Too quiet. My stomach dropped. I walked into the kitchen, heart already galloping. Michael was standing by the island, his phone in one hand, mine in the other. The screen was still lit. I'd left it on the counter while I showered. The message glowed like fire. I miss the taste of you. Everything stopped. I couldn't hear anything, just my pulse in my ears and the faint sound of my breath catching in my throat. The silence was nuclear, like the calm before a building explodes. Michael turned slowly. His face wasn't angry, not at first. It was something worse. Blank. Stunned. Like he'd been punched in the stomach and was still waiting to feel the pain. Then he spoke. Just 3 words. Who is he? I didn't answer. What could I say? I opened my mouth, but there was nothing left inside me except shame. Michael slammed the phone down so hard, the sound cracked through the kitchen like thunder. The pictures on the wall trembled. One fell. Glass shattered across the tile. And just like that, the screaming started. His. Mine. Ours. He yelled things I'll never unhear. Things like, was it worth it? Was he better than me? Did you ever love me at all? I tried to speak, but every word came out wrong. I'm sorry. It wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't mean to, but I had. I had meant to. Over and over again. He cried. God, he cried. Not just tears, but deep, guttural sobs. The kind that shake a man from the inside out. And I just stood there. Still damp from the shower. Wrapped in a towel. And absolutely powerless. Noah never came back after that. I told him not to. No calls. No messages. I blocked his number before I could change my mind. He texted me once, one last message before I shut it all down. It said, I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted to love you. But love wasn't enough. Not anymore. The moment I saw the look on Michael's face, the raw devastation behind his eyes, I knew I had just broken something I could never fix. Not a plate. Not a promise. But us. Whatever us had once been. And the worst part? It wasn't sudden. It wasn't one night or one kiss or one lie. It was a slow erosion. 1,000 small betrayals that built until the dam cracked and swallowed us whole. The house felt different after that. Colder. He slept in the guest room. We didn't speak for days. Meals were silent. Doors were always shut. Even the air between us changed, like it had given up trying to carry sound. And I just walked through it, numb, hollow, trying to piece together what had just shattered. Not just a marriage, but a version of myself I didn't recognize anymore. The kids stayed with my sister for a while. Michael moved into the guest room. A week later, he moved out completely. He didn't tell me where. Just left a folded note on the dining table, 2 lines, written in his neat, familiar handwriting. Don't call. I need space. Please don't let the kids get caught in this. He didn't slam the door. He didn't yell this time. He just left. And the quiet that followed was so loud it rang in my bones. The house became a museum of mistakes. His toothbrush still in the holder. His scent faint on the pillow he no longer touched. Drawers half empty. Frames turned face down. I was alone. Truly, suffocatingly alone. In every room, there were echoes of laughter that used to live here, of habits, of comfort, of the life I shattered like a dropped glass bowl. I sat at the kitchen table most mornings, staring out the window, coffee going cold in my hands. My phone was silent. Noah didn't call. He didn't text. And I didn't reach out either. I couldn't. Even if I wanted to. Because something inside me had shifted. Something irreversible. I deleted Noah's number. Not out of anger, but out of necessity. Every time I looked at it, a war would start inside me. Memories of his voice. His hands. The way he made me feel like I mattered again. But then I'd remember Michael's face. That look in his eyes, that hollow devastation. And I'd feel the weight of my choices press down on my chest like a stone. So I erased Noah from my phone. From my messages. From my browser history. but not from my mind. Not yet. I started therapy. Twice a week at first. I sat on a soft gray couch in a room that smelled faintly of lavender and rain. I talked about Michael, about Noah, about how I'd lost myself in the margins of motherhood and marriage, how I had confused feeling desired with being whole. I journaled at night, poured my thoughts onto paper like ink could save me. I took long walks alone, through quiet neighborhoods where no one knew my story. And I cried. God, I cried. In the shower, where no one could hear me. Where hot water could wash away the evidence of regret. There's a kind of grief that has no name. It's not for a death. Not for a breakup. It's for a version of yourself that you can't go back to. That's what I was mourning. Not the affair. Not even the marriage. But the pieces of me I broke trying to belong somewhere, anywhere. I didn't just lose him. I whispered to myself one night, voice barely above a breath. I lost who I was pretending to be. And maybe that was the beginning of something. Not healing. Not yet. But reckoning. With the truth. With my flaws. With the woman I'd ignored for years. I stopped trying to fix the story for anyone else. I let people believe what they wanted. That I was the villain. The unfaithful wife. The selfish one. But I knew the truth lived in shades of gray. Because I didn't cheat for excitement. I cheated because I was starving. For connection. For warmth. For someone to look at me like I was still visible. And in the end, the hunger cost me everything. So I began to rebuild. Not the marriage. Not the image. But myself. Piece by trembling piece. And I promised, never again would I go so far just to feel alive. Because now I knew. It starts from within. Not from someone's hands. Not from someone's eyes. But from facing the wreckage. And choosing to rise anyway. 2 years. That's how long it had been since I watched him disappear in my rearview mirror. Since I deleted his name, but not his memory. Since the storm. The days had grown quieter. Life had leveled out. The kind of normal that doesn't come from healing all the way, but from learning how to carry what you can't change. I was different now. Not perfect, but present. Grounded in a way I never used to be. It happened on a Sunday. Of all places, a grocery store parking lot. I was pushing a cart full of produce and toilet paper toward my car, halfway through a mental checklist of what I'd forgotten when I glanced up. And there he was. Noah, standing by his truck, one hand on the driver's side door, looking down at his phone. Older. His jawline a little more defined. A hint of silver in the scruff along his chin. Still wearing that same leather watch I remembered brushing my lips against once, in a motel room neither of us ever returned to. And then, he looked up. Our eyes met. And for the briefest, most fragile moment, time folded. The world went quiet. It wasn't a romantic moment. There was no music. No slow-motion heartbeat. Just stillness. Recognition. A memory held gently between us. No smile. No wave. No words. Just knowing. He didn't move. Neither did I. And in that quiet stretch of a second, I felt something inside me release. Not love. Not longing. But peace. I turned away. Not out of shame. Not out of guilt. But because there was nothing left to go back to. And for the first time since that chapter of my life cracked open, I didn't want to rewrite it. I didn't want to rekindle it. I didn't even want to understand it any more than I already did. It was what it was. It broke me. It built me. And then it passed. I loaded my groceries into the trunk, slid into the driver's seat, took a deep breath. And when I drove away, I didn't look back. Because I didn't need to. That part of me, the one who needed him to feel alive, she no longer sat in the driver's seat. Some stories don't end with a kiss. Some don't end at all. They just quiet down, tuck themselves into the folds of who we become, and wait to be remembered when we're strong enough to smile at the pain. Some stories end with a silent parking lot, a passing glance, And a promise to never forget, but never return. Have you ever loved someone you weren't supposed to? Someone who wasn't meant to be part of your story, but showed up anyway, shaking the foundations of everything you thought you knew about yourself? Would you risk it all? Risk the safety of your life, your family, your future, just for a chance at feeling alive again? Even if it meant losing everything else. I'm not asking for judgment. I'm asking for understanding. Because the hardest stories are the ones we carry inside. The ones no one sees beneath the surface. Maybe you've been there. Or maybe you're afraid to go there. Either way, you're not alone. So, tell me, what would you do if you found yourself at a crossroads like mine? Would you stay? Would you run? Would you risk everything for a moment that feels real? Drop your thoughts below. Let's talk. Let's be honest. And if you want to hear more stories that dive deep into the messy, raw truth of love, betrayal, and what happens after, subscribe to Cheating Confession Diary. Because here, no story is off limits, and every confession matters.